Echoes of color.
Mental health isn't like the most popular conversation in Nigeria, but it's something that we need to talk about. It is a conversation that has been on the table, but nobody has ever picked up. And now, when you combine that with queer situations, queer lives, and queer realities, people often say it's a non existent conversation. But today, we're going to be talking about mental health issues as it relates to sexual minorities, specifically the LGBTI community in Nigeria. This is Echoes of Color, and you're welcome. My name is Abel Miaka, and I have two really distinguished guests here who are experts within the field of study and practice. They're both psychologists and they work with non-government organizations that provide services, mental health services to persons who require them the most within the community. Today, with them, we're going to be talking about these issues and how it relates to sexual health intervention programming and how it even affects the community on a contextual level within the social space and the legal space. With me here, I had Mr. Sherrif. Mr. Sherrif works with the Initiative for Equal Rights, based in Lagos. He's been the clinical psychologist at TIES for 3 years now, and he's been in charge of everything to do with mental health programming within the space, not only in Lagos State, but also across Nigeria, so to speak. And with me here, we have Mr. Kachi, who is also a psychologist and works with the International Center for Advocacy and Rights to Health. He's been in charge of the mental health department there, where he has counselors who work with him to network and access and reach persons who might have mental health issues through therapy sessions, whether virtual or physical, in any regard. And he also is the person in charge of the support group program for mental health, for the mental health department at ICA. Both of you are really, really welcome.
Thank you.
Great. So let's start. Mental health. Mental health. Okay, great. What is, or what would I say when we talk about mental health and the community, the LGBTQ community? You know, it's one thing for you to have a space where people don't recognize you for probably things that are attributed to you. But it's another thing when you have a real issue that it's everybody's issue. It's a human issue. It's an intersectional issue. So how, or within the scope of the community, what would you say are the most prevalent or the most rampant challenges that we face within the community, mental health challenges that persons face within the community?
Okay. For the mental health challenges we face in the community, we have topping the list, we have depression, we have anxiety, and I think we should also have suicidation. And reasons is because this marginalized community go through lack of acceptance, and also they go through stigma and discrimination. So that has actually created rising depression and the rest of it.
Oh, wow. Do you say this, Sheriff?
Yes. Okay, for me, I would say sexual minority stress. Because when we are talking about the subjective experience of queer persons, especially in a country like Nigeria, sexual minority stress is what is like the prevalent mental health condition. Because as a result of this sexual minority stress, they tend to face things related to stigma, discriminations, which can manifest in various mental health conditions. For some person, it could manifest as anxiety. For some person, it could manifest as depression, traumatic experience, PTSD, among others.
So basically, SMS now is like the umbrella term of most of the mental health issues persons face within the community, if I get that right.
That's that.
Great. And Kachi, you mentioned suicidal ideations. How does that manifest? I mean, and we obviously know that in the country there are certain laws that prohibit and criminalize. But how does suicidal ideations come to fruition or manifestation in this regard?
Okay, so where you see an individual who is going through stigma from the society and discrimination, and then probably when he comes home, the family is supposed to accept him, the family is not accepting him, and he feels lonely. Now, most of these persons don't get the opportunity to, meet with other small families or people who are like them. So they feel they are all alone, and of course, no need of living, and the whole depression is just sinking them in. They just keep bottling everything to themselves. Not everybody will be able to open up on certain situation, and it also leads them to going into addiction, maybe start abusing drugs and thereof.
Scoring. I saw you nodding your head, Sherrif. You want?
Yeah.
I figured you wanted to say something.
No, it's fine. He actually did justice to it.
Okay.
Suicidal ideation just has to do with when individuals are having the thoughts of whether to kill themselves, especially when they feel that that's like the only escape that they have. And that is more reason why people need to understand the availability of support in the various aspects of the community and the organization.
Great. So basically, suicidal ideation still stems from discrimination, if we can put it that way. How then do we now say within a space like Nigeria that discrimination manifests in any way? How do we, what are those elements that, erupt some level of, you know, non-invalid impressions within this person that would lead them to do things, probably maybe hurt themselves or isolate themselves from society? I mean, how does discrimination, manifest within this regard?
Okay, if I understand your question very well, you're talking about how
How does it
manifests psychologically among queer persons
Yes.
in Nigeria. Okay, so I think I would just start from what the society regard as the norms. And the moment you are different from that norms, they feel that there is an anomaly.
Yeah.
And that anomaly is something that they now tend to attend to with negative behaviors, homophobic comments, and even try to write the identity of the person off as if they are not human beings. So that goes a long way to kind of affect how people feel discriminated, even when it comes to access to services in our healthcare system. That's also on something that is also concerning, because the moment some health facilities realize that, oh, this person is not straight, they do not, some of them, let me use some of them, do not necessarily focus on what the individual is coming to get. I mean, in terms of the service you're supposed to provide for the person, but you are rather capitalizing on the sexuality, which does not have anything to do with the care you are supposed to provide.
Amazing. Catch Trump something.
Okay, so for the discrimination, how it manifests through when the victim or the person involved has gone through a lot of this has gone through a lot of stigma, and they get to start having low self-esteem and worthlessness, which leads to depression because they tend not to believe in themselves again, and also like they might just end up with the society case and all that.
Oh, wow. So, as persons who generally have, met with clients, have been in therapy sessions with clients, has followed up, can you share some of your stories of resilience or some success stories with us so that we can understand that there's hope yet, regardless of, the dark clouds that might exist?
Okay, so for the success stories for resilience, of course, like for my organization, we have that's ICA, we have community what's it called, support groups for people, and with that actually it has helped to build a lot of communal bonds amongst people who probably are who has addiction cases, depression, and low self-esteem. Like, so it has helped them to boost their distance, and whereby they get to see people who they get to understand that okay, they are not the only ones going through this situation, and also they get to like get better with time.
Commenting. Thank you. So before I come to you, so most of these support groups allow individuals to kind of share the same trauma with like-minded persons, if I get that right, and kind of maybe when I say exchange experiences, I'm not trying to make light of the situation, but like exchange experiences and kind of read it. I can relate with that. I remember when I was in secondary school in my GSS 1, so I didn't want to go to boarding house. Sorry, I didn't want to go to boarding house at all. But my dad took me, and I remember when it was prep, every time to read in the night, we had a group. would I call it a support group? Maybe that was what it was back then.
Like-minded.
We would go into a dark room and all sit down and be like, I remember when I used to sit at home. By this time, we'll be watching Chelsea and we start to cry. And I think in some ways we would cry for like 30 minutes and everybody would just wipe their tears and go back to their lives. Like, as like, yeah, I kind of felt.
You have the same goal, and that's
Yeah.
what brought you together.
You want to go home, so let's cry about it and then move on. You get that kind of thing. And it worked, even though half of those boys never came back after second or third term.
That's like a social support.
I'm telling you. And I needed my social support when I moved into GS2 and the likes. But I mean, I got used to the fact that I was in a boarding house. So, how, Sherrif, can you share with us some stories of resilience through the work that you've done so far?
Okay. It's actually a lot. It's really a lot. You know, it's one of the things that actually keeps me going as a therapist, even when the workload is much. Because, imagining someone that you're meeting for the first time and they're on the verge of killing themselves, and, having another session with the person, and the person telling you that, oh, thank God, I'm glad you came, and the person telling you that, oh, I'm glad you came at the right time. And the second session or subsequent session, you happen to see the person again, and the person is like, oh, I'm really glad that you came as at the time that you came, because if you were not there as at then, I could have killed myself. And now I have the hope. I now have the resources to keep moving on and keep going on. So a lot of stories like this and feedbacks like this are part of what is making me as a professional to keep going on. And one of the projects that I'm currently working on has to do with support group for survivors of conversion practices who experiences various traumatic experience as a result of, perpetrators and all of that. And what that support group made me realize has to do with the importance of trauma bonding, where people come together to share their stories, of course, where they are already assured that this is a safe space and all participants signed confidentiality agreement form.
What happens here stays here.
What happened there stays there, which makes them feel safe. And people were like talking about their experiences. And the essence of that is to help them to kind of normalize that situation, to help them make it see it as less traumatic, so that whenever they remember it, it does not necessarily have to serve as a trigger, but rather, oh, it was an experience and it does not, and it was an experience and it doesn't define me anymore. So, and one of the interesting thing about the support group is also has to do with how some other activities were integrated into it to make it reach in such a way that people were able to express themselves from which is different from the conventional group therapy support group sessions.
Great. I mean, as you kept saying that and you said trauma bonding, I could relate so much with it based on the feedback or the story I just shared with you guys. And one thing just kept ringing in my head, trauma bonding, trauma bonding. So it's safe to say that queer persons in Nigeria are all victims of some kind of trauma. And the resilience of, meeting, trying to, or network, trying to gather, is an indirect form of trauma bond, if I can.
Yes.
Did you say that is correct?
Yes.
It's not that straightforward.
But when the
Because when I look at
when
the
you
negativity within the space,
well,
so those little pockets of spaces where you can be free to talk, like the work that non-government organizations are doing, creating safe spaces for people to actually talk about their issues, access sexual health, reproductive health services, access mental health services. It's a way of trauma bonding if you
Looking at it based on the end goal that everybody is trying to achieve.
Yes.
Is a way of trauma bonding.
So in a way, even Nigeria, the economy concept, we're all going through and say, how fun. I say, no, within the economy they talk this day. So we're all trauma. So great. But like with the work that you're doing now, is it like a short-term project or is it something that is still ongoing?
Okay, it's something that is meant to be continuous. because a lot of people need help, and we need to try as much as possible to help as many people as we can. And a lot of what we do also depend on funding. In as much as the funding keep coming, we would keep providing the support and care.
Okay, so when we talk about support and care, what role does community support help in terms of mental health?
It actually helps a lot because I could remember that some years back, I facilitated a training among community members so that they can become a psychological first aider. The training was on psychological first aid. We don't have a lot of mental health professional that are affirmative, in quotes, affirmative. So we don't have a lot of them to provide these services. And what did we do then? We now had to leverage on the community that we have. That okay, if Mr. A can come to meet Mr. B to tell them their problem, they can be able to provide that support. That is because there are actually some basic things that people need to know, that when they know this, they can be able to provide support to their peers. And the one that they are not able to handle, they can always refer, because I also ensure that they have my contact and they can always refer anybody that they are not able to, handle. So that's in a whole lot of sense. It was more like a kind of empowerment for the community members to be able to support themselves. And that has really gone a long way, because aside from them having access to therapy sessions, a lot of person feels that when they want to talk about anything related to therapy, it means that probably you are about to go cycle.
I swear.
And why would you some person will be like, why would you ask me to go for therapy when
There's nothing wrong with me.
it's just small issue I'm trying to deal with? But but because I've already been able to identify that oh, there could be a barrier to why people might not want to access therapy, then of course they can be able to speak with their friends. And part of what we also do also has to tell them to let their other friends know that they can be able to provide this support, because in the long run, what some person actually made is just that one person that would give them listening here without being judgmental.
Yes, I think that's really, really awesome. And just to kind of follow up to your statement, or more like a follow-up question to the statement, in the community, the issue of confidentiality is always riddled with a lot of controversy and a lot of people finding hard to trust people. How then were you able to put that as a challenge within this space or community of persons that provide first aid mental health services? Because it's one thing for you to tell me, oh, you train these people. It's another thing when I come up and I tell you something, Onyeka or Kachi is here, and
I've carried the gist.
yes. How do we avoid the gist going around? Because there are some people, even if they access the services, they still don't. How do we get them to trust that you can tell the psychological first aider that it is okay to talk to this person and you will feel secure to, ensure that your conversation is safe with them?
Okay, thank you for that. I said it was a training, and part of the curriculum of the training has to do with the basic ethics of providing this service. Because for you to be able to provide this service, there's a particular ethical procedure that you need to abide by. And part of that is confidentiality. We have the do no harm too. We have the non-maleficence benevolence, which has to do with anything you'll be providing, any services you'll be providing to this person must not hurt them, must not add to their problem, and it should be beneficial to them. And part of that was also confidentiality. And one of the ways with which that confidentiality was being used to train them was based on putting yourself in the other person's shoe. You come to me to tell me your deepest worries, and I got to carry those worries and I start circulating it. How would you feel? That was like an angle that was being taken into. And another thing was also the importance of how someone can actually kind of sue you because you share their confirmation. Because you are the person that say that, oh, this is the service I provide. And if you are doing anything opposite that, then that means you are not qualified. And again, one of the things that makes anybody to be willing to discuss anything with you is when you assure them of confidentiality. And I hear that a lot when a lot of persons tell me that, wait, how do you even get strangers telling you about their deepest worry? Some persons have told me that before. How do you get them? I'll be like, no, just assure them that, oh, all the information you're sharing with me is going to be safe and secure with me. And if there is any situation that would warrant me to share any of your information, of course I will seek your consent. And even when I seek your consent, you would tell me the level with which I can share the information. And in most cases, those information are being shared for your own good. Probably you needed to see a medical personnel as a result of a rape incident, and I want to refer you. I have to share some information about you, but I need your consent. Yeah, I need your consent. And you also tell me the level with which I can share that information. So if there is any other thing you want to share, you can always tell them yourself. So confidentiality is something that is very key. In fact, it's one of the cornerstone, one of the foundation to this profession.
Great, amazing. So I think it's a good segue to talking about the gaps and challenges generally within the community and access to mental health. I don't know anyone who wants to start us off. Basically, what are the current challenges that we have or that seem to exist and debar persons from accessing mental health services, especially when you have a double jeopardy situation with queer persons?
Okay, for the gaps, we have a lot of gaps ranging from the fact that this person is queer and mental health services. Back then, if you tell someone to go for mental health therapy session, like Sherrif had said now, they'll be like, oh, sorry, I'm not mad. That's what they just feel. They feel like, I'm not, but it's something I can always handle myself. So because of that, they don't want to associate themselves with anything relating to mental health. And then coupled with the fact that, okay, the stigma, how will I now go and tell my mental health, my therapist that, oh, I'm queer and I am having some mental health issues. That's like double issues. So I think that has actually stopped a lot of people from accessing mental health services, and coupled with the fact that it's not affordable. When we talk about mental health services in Nigeria, it's not easily affordable. It's not accessible.
Sorry, I don't have plenty of you in the space.
Yes. So how many therapists do you know? And reasons is that, okay, most psychologists are, when you're like, oh, I'm a psychologist, and they're like, what are you doing in this country? Can you just leave? Because I freeze turn the law. Result of people didn't go for therapy sessions at the whites. So it's not, you won't find your audience here. Like, it's not for the black. True. That we have our own support. We have strong energy to deal with those things. So it's not accessible, it's not affordable. But these NGOs, like my NGO, ICA has actually helped in bridging the gap a bit, whereby we get a lot of queer persons who are able to access mental health freely, and those ones who even don't want to come, we have the toll-free line whereby they could call free of charge without them. Oh, you can't say I don't have airtime. I can't have airtime. You can't.
Yeah.
So we using the toll-free line, and also you could talk and your voice will be heard.
Great, thank you. Sharif?
Okay, the gaps. Thank you for that. So, for the gaps, I would say it's come from the individuals. A lot of time when we are talking about the gaps, people feel like it's external, but sometimes it's internal because some persons deal with internalized homophobia. Some persons deal with self-stigma. In fact, some persons also discriminate themselves. And for an individual going through things related to this, they are already putting themselves at disadvantage. And this kind of also prevents them from seeking help. So it does on that aspect. And looking at the geographical zone too, when we are talking about the rural and urban area, so the accessibility there too is not that pronounced for those that are the rural area.
And even when it comes to our programming, a lot of services that a lot of organization does do not even cater for people in those rural area. And these people are also those that are supposed to access these services. So another one has to do with the teletherapy, which has to do with how this has helped to provide services to individuals regardless of the location that they are. Because I always say that the service I provide is beyond the scope of Nigeria, is beyond the scope of Africa, because I'm not just seeing queer persons in Nigeria or Africa alone, but globally. I have clients all over the world because they can be able to access the services online over a video call. And that's not just there, it's also about how you make the accessibility of the service seamless. You don't necessarily have to see me before they book their session. There is just a link for them to fill, and I have their bio information and why they want to see me. And they also were able to pick a date that fits for both of us, and that makes it seamless. But is that the solution? No, that's not the solution, because this service is not accessible to those that do not have access to internet. So that's like another gaps. Another gap I want to talk about is also on the aspects of healthcare. Because it's so sad and it's so limiting that despite how we think that we've evolved over time when it comes to the healthcare space, there are some healthcare personnel who allow their personal bias to come into the service provision that they provide. And that's a big gap. It's an extra strength for me to leave my house that I want to access.
Yeah, carrying this in my
And
chest.
these people, don't let me say these people, a lot of us are trained. A lot of us are trained to provide this service. Yeah, to provide this service without being judgmental, and you allow your personal bias to affect the service provision that you want to provide for somebody just because they are different, which has nothing to do with why you are there or the service provision you want to provide.
Great. So you mentioned in your gaps, you talk about internalized homophobia and self-hate. How? Well, obviously we already know why, but can you kind of expatiate more on how this, in a space like Nigeria, how stuff like this can develop? How internalized homophobia, how self-hate can become a reality and something traumatic for that individual?
Okay, so over time, when an individual keep on going through self-hate, because I am different, I feel I am different, and I don't like the way I am, I don't like the way I look and terrible. So you get to find out that they start hating themselves, and over time, they start projecting that also to the society. For instance, you get someone who's supposedly maybe lack of acceptance from the family. The family don't like this person because, oh, you identify as this, and then your family don't like that and they don't accept it. Now you get to find out that this child, while growing up, will start having that I am different, I don't want this, I don't want this, and start hating themselves. And before you know it, they start projecting that bad energy or negativity to the public.
Great. Sherrif.
Okay, so earlier on, I used to think that internalized homophobia is something that is internal, personal, that has nothing to do with what's
That's worthy with the
external.
yeah.
So I was going through some articles and I had a kind of mindful learning, and I was able to actually kind of see that internalized homophobia is actually something that is learned from the environment. Imagine constantly being told that, oh, something is bad, and that particular thing feels true to you. They kept telling you, oh, this thing is false, this thing is false, this thing is false. And it's, but it feels true to you. And because you constantly hear it, not just hear it, you constantly experience how they act towards people
that are living that thing that is told to you, then you tend to internalize it. That is how the word internalize, that's how I feel that comes in. So then another challenge is when it comes to this internalized homophobia is also how it's, affects how they also, behave with other queer persons in the society, of course, in a negative way.
Okay, so what's the relationship between identity affirmation and mental health? Anybody want to go first?
Okay, that's a deep.
What's the relationship between identity affirmation and mental health?
Okay, I got the question. I thought you wanted to.
Yeah, the question is for anyone.
Okay, so when we are talking about identity affirmation and mental health, I feel like it's actually one thing, not like something that should be separated. Because as I was saying earlier, I talked about something related to affirmative service provisions. And identity affirmation and linking it with mental health has to do with when you are providing services to a particular client, regardless of who they are, you need to affirm their identity, celebrate them, don't rule them out. Most especially when this identity is not problematic to this individual. In as much as it's not problematic to this individual, it's not causing harm to these individuals, and this individual is not saying that this is something that poses threat or danger to me, then why can't you affirm that identity? It is when you do not affirm this identity, it now goes in another way around to affect their mental health. Like I said earlier, imagine going to an healthcare facility where you feel that you should get help, but you get what you feel worse living there because of the negative experience you had, which a lot of this thing is being summarized to lack of affirming the identity of these persons.
Great. So when you talk about identity affirmation and mental health, would it be safe to say that being queer or being gay or being considered a sexual minority is seen as different? Would you say being queer is a mental health issue? Certain people believe that for you to be gay, you have to be crazy. And we know that in Nigeria, crazy doesn't exist. As Nigerians and black people that we are, crazy doesn't exist within our space. We don't need mental health. We're on our own, we self-therapize ourselves. So would you say that queer persons within the Nigerian space are deemed crazy, or it is not a mental health illness?
Okay, so it's not a mental health illness because initially we see it as a mental health illness because it was in the DSM free and the but when we evolved, it was removed and it wasn't seen as a mental health illness anymore. Instead, it was seen as okay, this is part of this person's life. This is well accepted. I mean, so it's now seen as part of the person's life. So it's not a crazy thing.
So basically, it's part and parcel of who they are.
Yes.
Sherrif?
Yes, I'm glad with what he is on that because that was what I was going to say earlier before now. It's regarded as a disorder, but over time, it's no longer part of what people consider to be a disorder. So something that is not a disorder, why do you want to cure it? And that is also what begets conversion practices. And research had also shown that this conversion practices does not work. So, and because of that, it also even poses more harm to the mental health of the individuals.
Oh, wow. So basically, when we talk about mental health, I remember the first time I accessed mental health services, and the lady, I think Dr. Kadiri, if I was specific, the question she asked me, I was also of the opinion that, oh, mental health is not anything in particular. But in this Nigeria, even with the way my parents trained me, oh,
It's strong.
all she asked me was, how are you? Guys, I started crying. She gets to she done brought the tissue and then and, then, and there were like layered issues. I lost my sister. I was having a hard time at work. A lot of things were going on in my relationship. So many things were just going apart. But in our head as Nigerians, then that's life. We have to bottle it up, trick it somewhere, and a lot of people misconstrue that thing as daily living, which is not. It's unhealthy. And when you relate that to queer lives, you realize that they go through, like, would I say twice what individuals have to go through within the space. It's one thing for you to be seen as invalid, it's for you to have your thoughts, your consciousness, your actions, your behavior, your beliefs seen as invalid as well too. This is where we talk about real issues. This is where we talk about those conversations people don't want to talk about. This is where we make uncomfortable comfortable. We've just talked about mental health, dissected it, and see the intersectionality between individuals and how it's a human issue. Once again, this is Echoes of Color, and I'm Abao Miaka. Thank you for staying tuned, and I'll see you later.
Echoes of Color.